All right, what's up, guys? Week 18 of the NFL season finished a couple days ago, so now we're kind of looking towards the playoffs. This video is mostly just going to be a recap of what happened in week 18, and then I'm going to make another video coming out in a couple days that's going to go more in depth into the playoff matchups and kind of like my predictions of what I believe is going to happen. So today, being that it's more of a recap, I'm just going to go over some of the bets I said at the end of last video. The pick'ems, I went 7-3 record on the pick'ems last week. The Eagles obviously let me down. Colts let me down. Jaguars let me down. So 7-3 on the week for pick'ems. That moves the record to 18-7 all time on pick'ems. The thing that really matters though is my picks against the spread. I went 2-0 against the spread. I had the Buccaneers to cover and I had the Lions to cover. The Lions, I felt good pretty much the whole game. Yes, the Vikings would go down the field sometimes, but the Vikings had so many turnovers. Nick Mullins was just giving away interceptions. So I felt good about that one. And the Buccaneers one was the one that was a bit more sketchy because it was just field goals that pretty much the whole game. The game finishes 9-0. Not I mean neither team looks good. Obviously you expect the Panthers to look bad, but the Buccaneers playoff team, they do win their division, so they will be in the playoffs. But I mean they didn't look great, which is probably lucky for the Eagles because the Eagles haven't looked great, which I'm going to touch on here in a little bit as we go into shockers of the week. I think there was two big shocks this week. One was the Jaguars versus the Titans. Jaguars lose 20-28. Jaguars win. They're in the playoffs. Jaguars lose and they're out. And they just have absolutely collapsed towards the end of the season. Their last 6 games, they've been 1-5. 1-5 in their last 6 games. They should win one more game and they find themselves in the playoffs. So I thought that they were going to be able to find a way, even though they were clearly just falling apart as a team to beat the Titans. But the Titans' run game looked great. Derrick Henry was great. Tajay Spears goes in, gets 2 touchdowns. Their run game was great, and then the Jaguars just couldn't get anything going. Just a very pathetic end to the season. I don't really know what they're going to want to do this all season. I can't really imagine that they get rid of Doug Peterson or do anything like that, but it's because they were doing so good, and then just to finish 1-5, just an absolute collapse. So now going into my next shocker of the week, Eagles Giants. Yes, the Eagles still make the playoffs, so not the biggest deal, but you see AJ Brown go down with a scary injury early. Supposed to be not as bad as what maybe it looked like. And then there's Jalen Hurts with his middle finger that gets hurt. But the reality is, the Giants scored all their points, and the Eagles did nothing when Jalen Hurts was playing in the game. Yes, Jalen Hurts gets pulled early because he's hurt, and it looks like they're going to lose. But it was, I think, 24-0 when Jalen Hurts officially got out of the game. So it's not even like, oh, Jalen Hurts got hurt and then Mariota kind of sold the game. They didn't really do that much once Mariota got in. They got all their 10 points when Mariota was in, but they just looked bad. I talked about it last week. There's something seriously wrong. I Offense looks terrible. Defense looks terrible. I mean, you just let the Giants go put 27 up on you, and then they get lucky. I'm gonna be honest, they do get lucky as the Buccaneers, who I have liked these past couple weeks, have not looked good. Yes, they beat the Panthers. They don't score touchdowns though. They beat the Panthers with field goals, which is just not what you're gonna want going into the playoffs. So even though the Eagles look terrible, they kind of got lucky with the draw that they're gonna go be playing the Buccaneers. So that's very, very lucky for them as they are looking terrible. We've just finished looking at some of the shockers. We're gonna look more in depth into just how the divisions kind of wrapped up. Um, First, we're gonna look at the AFC. It's interesting that the Bills ended up being able to win the AFC East. If you would have looked at them right kind of like in the start/middle of the season, they were looking really, really bad. And it was kind of just weird. It's like they just can't figure out what they need to do. A lot of turnovers. It's just it was interesting because the Bills have just been so consistently good, and they finally figured it out, I guess, to finish up 11-6, which is not where you thought they were going to be towards the middle of that season. And the Dolphins kind of have a little late season kind of collapse in a way that is just very, very interesting that they ended up not winning their division. Not really going to talk about the rest of the AFC East, just none of them were good. AFC South is the very, very interesting one, just touched on the Jags, that the Houston Texans end up winning the AFC South. Very, very big. Congratulations to CJ Stroud. But that one's crazy that the Jags at one point were the one seed in the AFC total, not just their division. They were the one seed. Then they just go on a huge losing streak and they end up not even making the playoffs. Look over at the AFC North with the Ravens. The Ravens, obviously the overall one seed. They have had a great season. They've been absolutely dominant. So you can understand that. But it's interesting. They have three teams in that division that ends up going to the playoffs as the Browns somehow figured out with Footsteps Flacco. And they have looked great recently. Flacco's turned back the clock, basically, circa when he was on the Ravens. And Pittsburgh, I do not believe that Pittsburgh is good. It's just, I really don't know how the playoffs, I think they get beat easily, but I'll go into that in the next video. When you go to the AFC West, it's weird. Every single year, you always look at the AFC West when the season's about to start and you go, that's going to be a tough division. It's going to be tough. And then it just doesn't end up being. It's been that way the past couple of years. The Chiefs win it easily. The Chargers will always underperform. The Denver Broncos will underperform. The Raiders ended up doing better than what it originally looked like. They were able to win a couple games towards the end of the season with their interim head coach. So props to them for that. Now moving to the NFC division, where we have the Dallas Cowboys, who have looked very, very good. They got blown out by the 49ers kind of in the middle of the season-ish, and then blown out by the Bills. But, I mean, their offense has looked pretty good. They look like they're going to be a good team. The Eagles, which I've obviously already talked about during this video, they look bad. They made the playoffs, but they look bad. Then when you go to the NFC South, I mean, I think that was the division everyone looked at and was almost basically just like, really? One of these teams that actually has to make the playoffs? Everyone was just bad in that division. The Buccaneers at one point maybe started to look like they were going to be good in these last couple weeks. I'm going to be honest, haven't looked great. So yeah, I'm very happy that only one team made it from that division because they just were not good. NFC North, two teams from this division actually made it. The Detroit Lions, who have looked solid all season. Couple hiccups. I would just say that their team is good, but I just have a tough time imagining Jared Goff, when it matters, when it counts, leading the team down the field, winning the game. I don't know. It's tough to imagine in the playoffs. Green Bay sneaks in there, and they've had a lot better season than I think everyone thought. Jordan Love looks great. He just makes some of those throws where you look at it and you're kind of like, oh, that's Aaron Rodgers. I've seen that before. I've seen that throw before. So that's interesting that the Packers win. Maybe they can do something. I don't know. I don't really trust that defense, and the offense is just so young that playoffs is a different beast. Then you go to the NFC West. You get the San Francisco 49ers, the powerhouse of the NFC. I could honestly see the Ravens playing the 49ers again in the Super Bowl. It's not out of the question. They have looked dominant all season. They had that one little bump in the road towards the middle around the time when Brock Purdy was getting the concussions. They had just started off, they lost to the Vikings, and they kind of went on a little downhill spiral, but then they got hot again. And the Rams, honestly, one of the craziest teams that I don't think anyone thought was going to be in the playoffs, as they kind of just looked like they had no pieces, so many young players. They had just gotten rid of Ramsey, and there wasn't a lot of hope. Stafford's coming back from a back injury, and they ended up having a great season. Puka Nacua setting records. Kyren Williams doing great in the backfield. They look great, and I think the number one thing that a lot of people forget, they almost beat the Ravens. When they played the Ravens, the game went into overtime, and the Ravens won off of a punt return for a touchdown. That's pretty crazy to think about, that the Rams actually almost beat the Ravens. So I think the Rams deserve a little bit more credit. But now, after talking about this, we're going to move into the fired coaches that have happened recently and then touch on a couple that happened during the season. So, coach firings, here we go. Obviously, the in the middle of the season you had Frank Reich with the Panthers. I don't know what the Panthers are gonna do at coach because the owner Temper he's kind of just he comes off as kind of a jerk, and I don't really see a lot of situations where you would really want to be coach for them. He is very controlling. He tries to put his hands on everything. I feel like yes, people are gonna want to be a head coach in the NFL, but I don't know if some of these top guys that are gonna be available are really gonna want to go to the Panthers, which just they look terrible as a team. Everyone knows that the owner is kind of honestly a clown. He's a lot to deal with, so I really don't know what they're gonna do. The other coach that was fired in the middle of the season, the Raiders, Josh McDaniels. Yeah, I saw something that was talking about maybe if Bill Belichick stays with the Patriots, maybe Josh McDaniels goes back to the Patriots as like OC or something like that, and maybe that's possible. But I'm not. McDaniels has kind of showed that he's just not a head coach. So if he gets a job again, it will probably be an assistant coach or something in that fashion. And then the other coach that also was fired in the middle of the season, the Chargers, Staley, he should have been fired. But like pretty much every single season he was the coach, they always underperformed. But that nail in the coffin versus the Raiders game when he was finally gone was very very big. Now going into the coaches that have more recently in these past couple days been fired, we have Ron Rivera with the Commanders. They're in an interesting spot because they do have a very good pick in this draft. So I think being the head coach for that team is very interesting. A brand new owner. You also have Magic Johnson in there. Sam Howell, it was weird 'cause Sam Howell looked, like okay at the start of the season, looked good. He was leading the NFL in passing, and then just an absolute collapse. So, I mean, I would say that their job is kind of appealing just because you get that very, very, very good first round pick. So it'll be interesting to see who they go with. The other one, which I thought was interesting, the Titans, Mike Rabel. That one doesn't make sense to me. That I don't think it was not that he's a bad coach. They had no one on their team. Their team just the roster was not good, and that's not his fault. That's more on the GM and what they've done in the past. I don't that firing does not make sense. One thing that I did like to see is if Bill Belichick does the words I even released, it'd probably be a mutual part ways with the Patriots. There's some rumblings that maybe Vrabel goes and coaches the Patriots. I think that would be a great match. But again, I don't understand why the Titans fired Vrabel. I know not a great season, but it's more on the roster, less on the coach. He's been a great coach. He's done great things with rosters that shouldn't have been that good. So I just don't agree with that. Whoever gets him as a coach is going to be very lucky. I feel like he should be on almost everyone's coach board. And then the final coach that so far has been fired is the Falcons, Artie Smith. It was interesting because you saw some of those rumblings during the season when they weren't doing good. There was like Artie Smith's job security is fine. Arthur Blank has already said that it's fine, and then it started to just get worse and worse. And then I think them just getting absolutely blown out final game of the season was kind of the final straw. And then I also saw some things that were saying maybe there's problems with the usage of some of those young players, which I do agree. Bijan Robinson did not get used as much as he should. Kyle Pitts doesn't get used as much as he should. Drake London, like those are three very very good guys. So I would say that coaching job is very appealing because they need to get a quarterback. Desmond Ridder is not good at all. They need to either draft a quarterback, sign a quarterback, trade for a quarterback. They need to do something because they have very good young offensive pieces. Bijan Robinson is a star. Drake London is a great wide receiver. I think if you got another one on the opposite side of him, it'd be really good. And then Kyle Pitts, he was very dynamic in college. He could be a great tight end, especially the way tight ends are used in the league now. I think that they probably just need to get a quarterback, and I think their job's appealing. And then bringing up coaches, they're maybe getting hired. The whole is Jim Harbaugh gonna leave Michigan? That one's interesting. I think that just plays a huge role. I bet a bunch of these teams that we just talked about are gonna interview him, so it'd be interesting to see just who gets hired. But even with Jim Harbaugh being in there, I think the best coach available right now is Mike Vrabel. I think every team should interview him. I don't think him getting fired makes any sense at all. Let me know what you guys think, but I just can't believe Mike Vrabel got fired. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said a couple times in the video, I will be making another one in a couple days talking more about the playoff matchups and kind of my predictions of what I think is going to happen. So thank you. Hope you enjoyed. See you guys in a couple days. Bye.